My mother-in-law set 7 places. At the table there were 8 of us. Welcome to Revenge Story Official, where the quiet ones always have a plan and justice never arrives late. If you believe silence is the most powerful weapon, you are in the right place. Let's get into it. She picked up my 7-year-old daughter's plate, walked it to the laundry room, and set it on the dryer like something to be stored. She thought a child was the easiest person in that house to move. By the end of the night, she would be the one standing alone at her own table. But what made the whole room go silent wasn't what my husband said. It was the 2 pieces of paper I set down first. My name is Megan. I am 34 years old. I keep other people's books for a living. And for 3 years, I had been keeping the peace in that family. Not anymore. We live in Millbrook in a narrow blue house with a kitchen that never quite warms up. June's drawings cover the refrigerator edge to edge, taped over the handle so you have to peel one back to grab the milk. Greg is a calm man with sawdust in his cuffs. He runs the floor at a cabinet shop 2 towns over. I married him 3 years ago when June was 4. His 2 older kids, Tyler and Hannah, 12 and 10, stay with us on weekends and half the summer. I love that house when it's full. I love it more when nobody's keeping score. Here is what nobody had bothered to add up. I was the one keeping it running. I scheduled the dentist visits and the oil changes. I remembered which cousin was gluten-free. When Greg's parents needed something, the request came to him and the money came from me, quietly, the way I do most things. Every family has one person who keeps the lights on. In ours, that person was me. And not one of them had done the math on what that meant. Sundays we drove 25 minutes out to Cedar Hollow where Greg grew up. Jana keeps a clean house and a cold ledger. From the first dinner, she had a way of saying June's name that put a little space around it. And how's Megan's girl? Never our June. Never the baby. Tyler and Hannah got the good chair and the second helping. They were told they had the Walsh nose, the Walsh stubbornness, the Walsh everything. June was told to be careful on the stairs. The Christmas before, I watched Jana hand out gifts. Tyler and Hannah each had a stack. June had one small box, the kind you'd give a neighbor's child. And every visit, June pressed a fresh drawing into Jeanette's hands at the door. I found them later in the recycling, smooth flat. Jeanette couldn't quite throw them out. But she couldn't quite keep them either. Our refrigerator in Millbrook is covered edge to edge with her drawings. Jeanette's refrigerator is bare metal. Tyler's school photo. Hannah's ribbon from the science fair. Not one of June's drawings, though she brought one every single time. 2 years back, Roy's cardiologist put him on a fistful of pills and the copays ran close to $500 a month. Then the roof in Cedar Hollow gave out over winter. $6,000 to replace, more than they had. So the help started the way most help does. One transfer I told myself was temporary. I covered the medication, then the groceries when the medication ate the grocery money, then the roof in installments so it wouldn't show as one frightening number. Greg knew. Jana assumed it came from him, his shop wages, his good son's heart. I never corrected her. Correcting her would have meant a conversation, and conversations in that family came with a bill of their own. So I logged each payment the way I log everything, because numbers are the one thing in that family that never lie and never change their story depending on who's in the room. I never kept those records to use them. I want to be clear about that. I kept them the way I keep all my ledgers. A column of figures doesn't care whose nose you have. It just adds up. Month after month, it added up into a quiet, heavy thing I carried without quite looking at. I could have told you the figure to the dollar at any moment. I just never said it out loud. They're single quotes as a kind of giving that curdles when you keep it secret too long. It stops being generosity and starts being evidence. I didn't know that yet. I was about to learn it at a birthday party. There was something Jana didn't know. Something Greg and I had been building for the better part of a year. The spring before, Greg came home from work, sat on the edge of June's bed while she slept, and watched her a long while. Then he found me in the kitchen and said he wanted to make it real. Not stepdad. Father. On paper. In court. The kind that can't be argued at a dinner table. We hired a family attorney. Because we'd been married over a year and June had lived under our roof since she was 4, the process moved without a contested hearing. Her biological father had signed away his rights long before I met Greg. There was no one to fight us. 6 weeks before the birthday, we drove to the courthouse in our good clothes. A judge with reading glasses asked Greg if he understood that adoption made June his child in every legal sense. His heir. His responsibility. Forever. No different from Tyler and Hannah. Greg said yes before the judge finished the sentence. June got to bang the little gavel. We have a photo of her mid-swing, mouth wide open, Greg's hand steadying her wrist. Her name is June Walsh now. Not Megan's girl. Walsh. Like the nose. Like the stubbornness. Like the everything. We hadn't told the family. We were saving it. Greg's birthday felt right. We pictured Jeanette's face softening. Finally, the paper doing what 3 years of casseroles couldn't. I kept the decree in a manila envelope, flat and official, in my bag. I told myself it was for the announcement. Part of me knew better. I also brought a second folder I'd printed the night before and told myself I wasn't really bringing. 3 years of transfers, dated, totaled, sorted by category. Medication, roof, groceries. You don't bring your books to a birthday party unless some part of you already knows the party is going to become an audit. Jana had set 7 chairs. I counted twice, the way I always count twice, because the first count is never the one I trust. 7. Brenda, Greg's sister, recently divorced, orbiting her mother like a moon that's forgotten it used to have its own light, had arranged the seating before we arrived. The children who belonged at that table had chairs. My daughter did not. Before dinner, the neighbors came by to drop off a card for Greg. Jana lit up. She put a hand on Tyler's shoulder and one on Hannah's and presented them like exhibits. These are the grandchildren. Tyler's going to play ball in high school. June stood 18 inches away, holding her rolled-up drawing, smiling up, waiting to be introduced. She wasn't. Jeanette's hand never moved. June tugged my sleeve and asked me the question she'd been circling for a year, quiet enough that only I could hear. Mommy, am I a grandkid too? I knelt down on Jeanette's polished floor and told her yes, told her she was somebody's whole world. She nodded the way kids do when they want to believe you and can't quite. Behind me, Jana said it loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. This table is for blood. June heard it. I watched it land on her, watched her file it next to the bare refrigerator and the recycled drawings and the one small box at Christmas. She didn't cry, she just got very still. The way I get still. And I understood for the first time exactly whose daughter she was. When dinner was called, Brenda moved toward June with her bright voice and her closed-door smile. Come on, sweetie, you get the special spot. The Dana folding tree cartoons. June single quotes s feet dragged on the rug. She looked back at me. Before I could reach them, Jana stepped between us. She put her own hand on June's shoulder and turned my daughter firmly toward the hall. The children who belong at this table will sit at it. June can eat in the den. She'll be more comfortable. The word comfortable. The kindest sounding cruelty there is, I said, in the voice I use when a client's numbers don't add up. She's staying at this table. Jana turned to face me fully, and the pleasantness she'd worn for 3 years hardened into what she'd wanted to say all along. Megan, let the real children sit with their father tonight. It's his birthday. June is just not. She paused and chose the cruelest possible honesty. She's not his. Not really. Everyone here knows it. I'm not going to pretend at my own table. June stood frozen under her grandmother's hand. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood the shape of them. This table is for blood. 3 times I had heard it, once in the kitchen, once to the neighbors. Now to my face with my child held under her hand. And then Jana moved her toward the door. June planted her feet. She didn't want to go. Everything in her was telling her to stay near her mother. Jana, performing her authority, gave her a push. Not a shove that would bruise, a push that said, you are a thing I can move. June stumbled. Her hand caught the door frame and Greg's birthday drawing, the one he'd tucked under his arm, slid loose and dropped to the floor between them, all 5 of us holding hands. Face up on Jeanette's hardwood. Nobody spoke. Tyler stood up so fast his chair scraped. Hannah's eyes filled. Roy half rose and sat back down, and June looked at the drawing on the floor and then up at me, not crying yet, just waiting. The way she'd waited her whole short life for an adult to fix the thing she couldn't name. I crossed the room. I looked Jonna straight in the eyes and spoke slowly so everyone in the room could hear every single word. Do not ever touch my child again. Jonna froze for a moment. People who control others with anger never know how to react when someone stays calm instead. Greg stood in the kitchen doorway with a little frosting on his thumb. He looked around the room, trying to understand what had just happened. Before anyone else could speak, Tyler broke the silence. Grandma pushed her. She pushed June into the door. A 12-year-old will tell the truth in a room full of adults who've agreed to lie. Something settled in Greg's face, not rage, something quieter and far more final, the look of a man recalculating every Sunday dinner of the last 3 years and arriving at a number he should have run long ago. Jonna decided to dig deeper. Your real children, Tyler and Hannah, they're Welsh's. What's left of this land goes to them. I won't hand it to a stranger's kid playing dress up at my table. The word stranger hit Greg like a slap. Brenda found her voice. Blood is blood. You can't just decide. I did decide, Greg said, quiet, cold. I reached into my bag. The room watched my hand the way you watch a magician. I took out the manila envelope. I walked to the table, to the empty place where June's chair should have been, and I set it down, the county seal facing up. Jonna, I said, for 3 years I've sat at your table and listened to you decide who counts. I let it go because Greg asked me to. I'm not letting it go anymore. Love isn't blood, it's who shows up. Let me show you who's been showing up. I slid the first paper out. This is a court order 6 weeks ago, in front of a judge. Greg adopted June. It's finalized. Her name is June Walsh by law. She is his daughter, full stop. The same as Tyler, the same as Hannah, which makes her your granddaughter, Jonna, and his heir, equally his heir with the same claim to this house and this land you were just promising to the others. Jonette's hand went to the edge of the table. That's you can't just, we did, a judge signed it. Tyler, reading over Roy's shoulder, broke into a grin. So June's really our sister, like for real? She was always your sister, Greg said. Now the law agrees. Hannah reached across and took June's hand, but I wasn't finished. I took out the folder, laid it next to the decree, opened it to the summary page. You said this table is for blood. Let's talk about who's been keeping the blood fed. I touched the first line. Roy's heart medication, 2 years, nearly $500 a month. The roof, $6,000 paid in installments. Groceries, the water heater, property taxes twice. I turned the page so she could see the total underlined. Twice the way I underline every figure that matters, just under $40,000. Jonna, over 3 years, and not $1 of it came from Greg's wages. It came from me. From the bookkeeper, from the stranger's kid's mother I've been paying to keep this house warm the whole time you've been deciding my daughter doesn't belong in it. The silence had weight now. Roy looked at his wife and said the thing he should have said years ago. Jonna, it's all true. He'd known. He'd watched his prescriptions get filled and his roof get fixed and said nothing because Jonette's disapproval was a weather he'd spent 46 years learning not to disturb. Too late to be brave, just in time to be honest. Jonna did what people do when their argument collapses. She got loud. How dare you bring money into my home, into my family? This is exactly what you do. You think you can buy your way into being family? Get that paper off my table. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I'm not raising my voice, Jonna. I said I don't need to. The numbers already did. I didn't bring money into this. You did. You brought it in. The day you decided some children eat at the table and some children eat by the door. I just wrote down what it cost. The louder she got, the quieter I got, until the gap between us was the whole story. Greg set June's drawing down on the table between the decree and the ledger. He looked at his mother, and then at his father, and spoke in the low, even voice he'd handed down to his daughter without either of them knowing it. You pushed my daughter out the door. He let those words sink in. My daughter. I sat in a courtroom 6 weeks ago and promised to be her father for the rest of my life. And tonight, you pushed her toward the cold as if she meant nothing. His face turned tense, but he said nothing. So this is what will happen now. We are leaving this house together, all 5 of us. And starting tonight, the money stops. Every dollar that has kept this house warm came from me. The woman you just humiliated and the child you just called a stranger. If June isn't family, then neither is the money you don't get to feed off this family and spit on half of it at the same time. Jonna went white, not pale white. Greg reached toward her one last time, and for the first time in his life she reached back and found nothing there. Happy birthday to me, he said almost gently. I'm spending it with my family. He picked up the drawing, the decree, handed me the folder, and lifted June into his arms. Then Tyler stood, looked at his grandmother, and said the thing I will remember longest. She's our sister. If June can't sit here, I don't want to either. He walked over and took June's hand. Hannah followed without a word. Just like that, the two real grandchildren had voted with their feet, and Jeanette's entire bloodline had picked the stranger's kid. We walked to the door, all five of us. The same door Jonna had tried to push June through an hour before we went out it together on our own feet into the cold porch air, sharp and clean after the heat of that room. Behind us nobody spoke. Roy half rose, sat again, his last small failure of the night, and Jonna stood at the head of her perfect table with her 7-place settings and the carving knife still in her hand, watching the family she'd spent 3 years sorting into real and not real walk out as one. The check stopped that week. I closed every recurring transfer, but Roy's heart medication still gets paid direct to the pharmacy. Nothing passin' G through Jeanette's hands, because I will not punish an old man's arteries for his wife's pride. It comes with one condition in writing, because I write everything down the day she calls June her granddaughter, and means it. We talk about the rest. Until then the door stays open from our side only. Roy called once alone and said he was sorry in the cracked voice of a man who knows sorry is a down payment on a debt he can't fully pay. Jonna hasn't called, Brenda hasn't either. The hallway in Cedar Hollow still has its wall of grandchildren. June's photo will never hang there. That is their loss to carry now, not my daughter's. Our refrigerator in Millbrook is still covered edge to edge with her drawings. Last week she added a new one taped right over the handle. 5 figures holding hands in front of a blue house. Mommy, Daddy, me, Tyler, Hannah. She signs them now. June Walsh. Blood decides who you're related to, but showing up decides who your family is, and I have learned to keep very good records of exactly who shows up. If you are watching this right now, tell me in the comments where in the world are you watching from. I read every single one. That is my story, and I will see you on Revenge Story Official, where silence is power and the truth always finds its moment.